I'm Nathan Dewberry, and I'm the director of the Redeem. Welcome to another episode of the Redeemed Man podcast. Today, I have a special guest with us, Shawn Ryan. Shawn is the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge. He has a background in business development and has worked with corporations like Cisco, Nortel, and Benjamin Moore. Shawn's been caught in the grip of addiction before and knows that struggle. He's a graduate of Teen Challenge, thus his passion for those who are caught in addiction, and then how he serves there in Pennsylvania with Adult and Teen Challenge. He's happily married and father of 5 beautiful children. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Hey Nathan, thank you so much for having me, man.
Well, we will jump right in with some rapid fire questions just so our audience gets to know you a little bit better. Shawn, what was your first job?
My first job, I think I worked. Let me think. Oh, I worked on a farm. So in Jersey, where I grew up, when you were 14, you could get working papers, and the only job you were allowed to actually work though was like a farm. So I worked on like a vegetable farm, and I moved irrigation and picked tomatoes and peppers. It actually was a lot of fun. It was a good job.
Nice, nice. If you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would it be?
Ooh. I probably would go to Greece and take my wife because she's been for years telling me that she wants to go to Greece. So that would kill two birds with one stone. I would enjoy a great vacation and I would please my wife.
Yes. Well, hopefully you can do that. My wife, that's one of her favorite places in the world. She says it's phenomenal. I've not been, but she says it's amazing. Loves the food, loves the culture, and
Yeah,
says the scenery is just stunning. Um,
awesome.
so you already mentioned this. You said you grew up in Jersey. What part of Jersey?
I grew up in South Jersey, a small town called Clarksboro. Big farm town. It's a good place to live. I have a lot of good memories from there.
Awesome. What's your favorite meal?
Ooh. That would have to be a filet mignon with a loaded sweet potato.
I'm hungry right now.
Well, that's what my wife's birthday was yesterday. We went out to dinner. We always go out to eat for birthdays in our family, and we usually go to steakhouses. So,
Good, good, good.
yeah.
Well, speaking of your wife, you've already mentioned that her, and I know she's probably your best friend, but outside of your wife, who's your best friend?
I mean, I have a couple. I have a guy who I'll probably talk about a little bit in this podcast. His name's Mike Keene. Uh, Mentor of mine, really put a lot into my life when I was going into my mess and supported me and helped me get through it. Was a big part of me helping turn my life around. So Mike Keene, and then here at Pennsylvania Teen Challenge, I met Pastor Bradley, who's our campus pastor, great man of God, a lot of fun, good golfer. So he'd probably be my best friend too.
Love it. Um, your favorite quote or Bible verse?
Oh boy, that's a good one. I'd say my favorite a Bible verse would be oh man, you put me on the spot here and caught me off guard. I'm just gonna have to pull it up. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's Ephesians 3:20, and I can't read it word for word, but it talks about God, and you were actually praying about it. Now unto him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. Unto Jesus Christ be the glory. Amen. And I just, I love that because I think we put God like in this little box. I know I do when things seem too big or too much. And who am I to put him in that box? I mean, he can do, it says it right here, exceedingly abundant all that I could ever ask or
Yeah.
think. So that'd probably be my favorite verse. If we're going to go to favorite quote, oh man, I have a whole bunch of them. I'd probably have to be something from like Mike Krzyzewski or something like that because I'm a
All
big
right.
college basketball
Yeah.
fan and I love basketball. We're a basketball family, so I'll look it up and I'll give it to you later. How's that?
Well, I definitely have to have that one. My wife is huge in basketball, so she was woke up this morning. She's like, I can't believe the Nuggets won it all. I just can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I'm excited for them, but I also was kind of rooting for the Heat too at the same time. So it
Yeah,
was tough.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you playing along with those rapid fire questions, Shawn. I'd just love for our audience to hear more of your story about how you grew up and kind of your journey to end up back at Teen Challenge. I know there's so much to this story, and we'll try to draw out parts of it as we talk. But if you could just give a kind of a quick overview, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a decent home. My mom was remarried a few times, so I had a couple of different fathers in my life. Didn't really get in any trouble. Played sports all through high school. Got out of high school. That's when I, you know, met like my first like kind of like real girlfriend, and she was a drug user. I mean, a beautiful girl. Worked at this diner I was working at. I had to train her. But she smoked pot and did different types of drugs, and I knew nothing about that. But I wanted to impress her and be cool, so I started entertaining some of that, smoking marijuana. I mean, I remember the first time I smoked marijuana, I was at her house. It was like my first time hanging out with her, and I think I threw up like all over her entire house. But as time went on, I mean, we kept dating more and more, and she started introducing me to more and more different types of drugs. And, I started doing like party drugs back in that day. I guess late 90s, early 2000s, it was acid and ecstasy was a big thing going around. So I started doing that. Then I wound up having a child with her. That's my oldest son, Tyler. I've 5 wonderful kids. I have 4 boys, 1 girl. Thank God I only have 1 girl because one's enough. She's my baby girl, though. I love her to death. So I wound up having a child with her. We broke up. Then I met my wife that I am with now. We started dating again. She did drugs and drank. I did drugs. We drank together. We partied together. We wound up having a child. So now I have, I'm in my early 20s, and I have 2 children with 2 different women. Tyler's probably 2, he's a year old, a year and a half, and then I have this other child. And then time just kind of went on, and I just kept getting worse and worse in my mess. I'm in and out of jail. Me and Michelle are kind of separated. Tyler's mom, she's still using. She's wherever. I don't know where she's at. And then as I'm going on, I'm still in and out of jail. I'm using more and more drugs. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Now I'm starting to commit crimes to support my habit, which is common, in drug use, right? A lot of the guys who come in here, they're in here because they're court ordered or what have you, a teen challenge, because they committed crimes to support their habit. So I'm committing crimes, and now I have some serious charges against me where I could either go to jail, and I'm probably at this point in my early 30s, still stuck in addiction, and I'm using heroin now, cocaine, methamphetamines, whatever I get my hands on, but predominantly heroin. I was an opiate user. So I'm in jail, and I have 2 children. They're older now. They're in school. They're kind of living with grandparents or with their mom or what have you, kind of just roaming around, I guess you could call it. And then I heard of this program called Teen Challenge. And I knew of the program. I remember kind of being in and out of church, and I would see them come because Teen Challenge sends the guys to the church, and they sing and they give testimonies. And I remember making fun of them. I'm like, I'll never do anything like that. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But at that point, I didn't have any other option. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this Teen Challenge thing a shot. So in 2007, I went into Teen Challenge, shackled with all shackled together, escorted by the police from New Jersey to actually Pennsylvania. Went into Teen Challenge, went through Teen Challenge, loved it, did really well, met the Lord there, got saved, just kind of found out who I was and who God was and where I fit in this whole thing called life. Restored my relationship with my wife now to be. We get married. She moves up here. I graduate the program. I'm doing well. She moves up here. We have our 2 kids. I have both my kids back with me now. We're living here in Rearsburg in Pennsylvania. We wound up having 3 more kids. But then, as I'm in the program, things are going well. My job's going well. I'm doing kind of business development while I'm here. The first time, because this is actually my second time back working at Teen Challenge now, I got a little prideful. I started doing well. I started getting a lot of promotions quickly. And, I kind of thought that, Teen Challenge needed me more than I needed God and Teen Challenge. So pride got in the way. I fell again. I relapsed. Relapsed pretty bad. Teen Challenge really worked hard to try to support me while I was here as a staff member. They sent me away to try to get some help, brought me back, supported my wife and my kids, did everything that a ministry should do to try to help somebody. Then again, I came back. I was doing well for a little while. I relapsed again, to the point where honestly I was stealing money from Teen Challenge, and I was stealing a good amount of money. We're talking in the tens of thousands of dollars. And they were kind to me and said, "Look, Shawn, we know you have a wife, you have kids, but what you're doing is horrible. We're not going to press charges against you, but you are going to have to leave now." So I left. I took me, my wife, my 5 kids. We found a place, thank God, by the grace of God. I don't even know how we got the place, but we got a place. That didn't last long. My 2 older kids moved back with their grandparents in New Jersey because that's where it was safe, because me and Michelle were in our mess again. Yeah. We have no home now at this point. We're in our Jeep, and I'm living with my wife, me, and my 3 kids. And my 3 little kids are 1, 2, and 3 years old. So very young. We're living on the streets in Pennsylvania in a town called Lebanon. We're not even from here. We're originally from New Jersey, so we're just trying to figure our way out. I'm committing crimes again now to support our habits, to try to just supply food for our kids, whatever it may be. I can't hold a job. Michelle can't hold a job. So finally, Michelle decides she's going to leave. She's like, "I'm going to go back to New Jersey with my parents. I'm going to take the kids with me." And what was I going to say? That was really the right thing to do. So she left. I'm out here by myself, committing crimes, going crazy. I finally go back to New Jersey myself to try to meet with Michelle and try to get myself together. Now, everybody in addiction always thinks that, you know what, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to quit. I'm going to do this on my own. And that was kind of my mindset, leaving here to go back to New Jersey. But obviously that didn't happen. Very far from the Lord, totally kind of just pushed him out of my life. And it finally caught up to me in 2013. Michelle and me, we did get a place, and we're kind of managing, but it's bad. It's not going well. My kids are kind of living with me, but my older kids are angry. My younger kids are just barely getting by. And I have all these charges against me, and the cops come to my house and knock on the door, and I see them. Now, my 2 older kids aren't with me. It's just me and my 2 younger boys. My daughter's down the street at her grandparents'. My wife is at her job at the diner. I see them, and I take the kids and I run. I go up to the attic. Now, I'm not right. I'm strung out on drugs. I'm not thinking correctly. So I go hide in the attic. Well, lo and behold, that the cops think I am harboring my children against their will and using them as like pawns to get myself out of trouble, which I wasn't. I just didn't want to go back to jail, and I didn't want to leave my family.
Right.
So after about 8 to 10 hours of this standoff, I fall asleep in the attic. The SWAT team's there. 5 or 6 blocks are shut down. You can't come in and out of the area. There's cops everywhere. There's helicopters with lights on my house. They finally kick down the door. They arrest me. They take my kids. And I'm on my way back to jail. My kids were fine. They were healthy. It's funny. I was just talking to my boys the other day, because Jacob is now 14 and Caleb is now 13. And they brought this up to me. They're like, "Dad, do you remember when, we were hiding in the attic?" Because they were probably 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And they remember this whole thing. And we just talk about it now. And it's so surreal that they know all that we've been through and all that I went through and what God's done to redeem our lives. But we were just talking about this the other day. So anyway, I'm going to jail. My wife has my kids. I'm in jail now. I'm facing a whole bunch of time again. My wife is strung out. And after about 2 months of being in jail, I get a call. I'm making a call home, and my wife answers, and I find out that all of my children were awarded to the state because she just couldn't manage taking care of them. And I, as a man and as a husband, as a father, I mean, that's my responsibility to make sure that those things don't happen. And I feel like I failed completely miserably. So my kids are now in the custody of the state of New Jersey. They're in foster care. My wife is homeless on the street. I'm stuck in jail facing a lot of time. And I'm just like, man, at this point, like there's no hope, right? And then this guy, Mike Keene, who I said was one of my best friends from earlier, he knows me and my family through kind of like our local church. And I worked with him for a few months in the past, just one of those odd jobs that you get while you're in addiction. He works for Benjamin Moore. Mm-hmm. So he comes and visits me in jail. And he says, and he knows nothing about drug addiction, never smoked a cigarette, never drank a drink in his life, never did a drug. I mean, clean cut guy, Christian man, grew up in the church, married, children, the whole, really has his life on track. And he goes, I don't know why, but the Lord told me to come tell you that he's not done with you yet. And I'm here because I want to help you. And at that point, I'm just like, I'm broke, and I'm crying because I don't think there's anybody left. I burned every bridge I had, you know, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this God that I heard about in Teen Challenge, that I got saved, that I kind of just threw to the side so that I could just do what I want, sent somebody in to come talk to me and tell me that he still loves me and that there's still, hope for me. So I told Mike, I'm crying. I'm like, listen, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be a good dad. I don't know how to be a good husband. I don't know how to be a man. I don't know how to do anything. Yeah. I said, but I'll do whatever you tell me to do, Mike. I don't care. So he supported me through the whole time I was in jail. I did about 12 months. And then I signed up for what's called drug court. Drug court is this, in lieu of going to jail, you can do this program. So I signed up for the program and I did outpatient counseling and then I had to go report to court and report to my probation officer, whatever. So I did that for a real long time. Mike gave me a job. He gave me a place to live. Now, before I came home, though, my wife was still homeless and strung out, but we got her into a program before I got home. One of the conditions that Mike put in place was that you can't go home to your wife. She's got to go get help because if you go home to her, you guys are toxic for each other, and you'll go right back to what you were doing. So she went away to a program in New York called the Hoving Home, which is kind of like a sister program of Pennsylvania Adult Teen Challenge. She went there. So I come home. He puts me in this little tiny office that he has because he doesn't have any. He's got some apartments, but all rented. But he had this little commercial space, an office probably by 15 by 20. He gives me. I have a cot. I have a little mini fridge. I have a flip cell phone and an alarm clock radio, no television, no nothing. Gives me a job stocking shelves at one of the Benjamin Moore paint stores. And I'm starting to get my life back. And he just kind of worked with me through this whole thing. I did through drug court. I learned a lot in drug court. I learned a lot in Teen Challenge about the Lord, about the Bible, about where I fit in this whole thing, about who God is and who I am as a man and who God is as God. But I didn't learn a lot about addiction when I was in Teen Challenge at that time because they didn't really provide addiction service. It was more discipleship, which is fine. A lot of people went through that program and did very well who were in addiction with just the discipleship. So the drug court program was actually a pretty good program for me because I got to learn about addiction from like a counselor. I had a counselor, I went to groups, I went to different type of therapies. And it's been since 2013 now that I smoked a cigarette, did a drugs, anything. I wasn't a big drinker, but I haven't had a drink, nothing for 10 years now. And it's neat, the marriage between what Teen Challenge gave me for my faith, which never left. I mean, we all know that, once God's in you, he doesn't leave you. You decide to leave him, right? But so I learned all about that. That was stable. And Mike, who's a man of God, and this men's group, they poured into me spiritually and helped me become a man of God. But this clinical program, this outpatient program where I went to this counselor and I learned about, my brain and how things work and how, certain pulses will set, these sensories so that you can figure out what addiction is doing to you. I got to learn all about that. And that really radically changed who I was and how I thought about addiction and my relationship with the Lord. And it just all kind of married together. And it's like God knew exactly what he was doing to make this whole thing work. So then I worked for Mike for a while until 2019, where ultimately Teen Challenge, the guy who runs Teen Challenge now, Chris McFadden, he worked for me the first time I was at Teen Challenge. Well, now he's running Teen Challenge, and he reaches out to me and he goes, "I'm watching your life through Facebook, through social media. I'd like to meet up with you and talk to see how you're doing. And I'm hearing lots of good things. I wanted to know if you'd ever be interested in working for Teen Challenge again." And I was like, "Man, do you remember, all that I did or what happened?" And he goes, "Yeah, but," he's like, "it looks like God has restored you to stability, that you're a changed man, and I think you could add value to our organization." I said, "Okay, well, let's meet." We met. And also at this time too, by the way, after I got out of jail and I was with Mike for 6 months, I got all my children back. So I had custody of all my kids. I got a place. And then 3 months later, my wife got out of her program and she came home to our house with all our children. God really restored everything very quickly. And then we, went to church. I mean, we went to church. We went to church Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. I mean, we were living in church as much as we could because, it was good for us. It was good for our kids. And we just wanted to be there. There were people that cared about us and loved on us. So anyway, fast forward to 2019. Actually, this is about 2017, late 2017, early 2018. Chris reaches out to me. I'm talking to him for a while. And I didn't know if I really wanted to get back into working with Teen Challenge. I was happy with where I was at. I had a good job with Benjamin Moore. I was making good money. I just bought a house. I had my driver's license back, which I didn't have for like 20 years. All the things, I had a nice ministry at our church now that me and my wife were running. It was called Overcomers. We had about 40 or 50 people who would come every Friday night, and we would do the steps together and pray together. So I didn't, my kids were going to a private Christian school at our church that we went to. So everything was very stable. I didn't know if I really wanted to rip up my whole family and move again, but we prayed about it for about a year. And then Chris kept reaching out like, "Hey, what are you thinking?" And me and my wife just said, "Okay, I think, this is where the Lord wants us to go." So we uprooted the family and moved out to Teen Challenge, and we've been here for about 4 years now. I started as the director of the long-term program, working with the guys in the program.
Yeah.
And then just because of my business development background, organically, I kind of started shifting more into business development role. And now here I'm Senior Vice President of Business Development for the organization, and God has blessed me and my wife abundantly. My wife works as a paraprofessional at the school down the street, helping kids who are in crisis or who are in need at the school. And my kids, they all go to school. My oldest son is married to a beautiful Christian girl down in Florida, working. My other son, he's saved. My oldest son's saved too. My other son, Cameron, he's going to Temple. He wants to be a politician, so he's in school. And my other three kids, they're all doing great in school. They're all saved. As a matter of fact, I was up at 6:30 this morning working with my younger kids doing off-season basketball workouts. So that's my life now.
Man, Shawn, praise God for his faithfulness. I think
Amen.
So many times we look at it and we see somebody's story of restoration, and it oftentimes is just that moment, and then you're like, oh, their life's good.
Yeah.
And your journey was not that journey. And yet, in the middle of all that, God was faithfully pursuing you.
Yeah.
And it's so encouraging. It's so mind-blowing that God would send people like Mike into your life as someone to speak and belief in you. And I think for me, looking and even in my own journey and so many other people, it really is oftentimes God sending somebody who believes in us, that is a picture really of his love for us and his belief, and that what can happen because of the gospel and the transformation and the goodness of God. And It sounds like that was a huge difference maker for you with Mike stepping in.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do it without him. I mean, him and his family just poured into us, gave us rides everywhere. I mean, and he was definitely strict too. Like, "I'm holding your money. You're only going to get so much. Where are you going? I need to know everything you're doing." But that's exactly what I needed. And one thing I tell the guys here too is, you have to be willing to accept that. It's very humbling, especially for me. I was 30 something years old. I'm a grown man.
Yeah.
But now I have this other grown man kind of telling me how to live my life day in and day out from every second. But you just got to humble yourself and do that, because, there's nothing better than, you want to become a great man of God. You hang around great men of God and you listen to them, and that's biblical. That's what they do. That you raise up generations, and he poured into me and raised me up, and his wife poured into my wife. And, now we're great friends, and, his kids are friends with my kids, and they hang out and do stuff. So it's just a great thing. And I'm just really blessed that God sent him into my life.
Oh, I can't imagine the relationship you guys have. And I love how God often does that. People who've made a difference in our life is a little bit kind of a discipleship relationship, and yet so often it shifts to really a true friendship, to where you're just brothers in Christ, encouraging one another, helping each other grow. And it's so beautiful how God does that. And I think as men, it's sometimes one of the things we miss out on the most is those depth of relationships that we can have with other guys in our life that really can encourage us and support us. I think a lot of times it's because we were never exposed. Sometimes our fathers didn't have the best friends, or the people we knew around us didn't. And yet when we get to experience being authentic and fully loved and fully known, it makes a tremendous difference in our life, especially when another guy can say, hey, I'm proud of you. I think all of us need a little bit of that in our life.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I always tell guys here who come through, find, a couple people, not many, and definitely find at least a couple good men that you can open up to, talk about whatever, and be transparent with, that won't judge you, but will hold you accountable.
That's right.
That has to happen. If you don't, who's holding you accountable? You can't, it can't be your mom. It can't be your wife. I mean, your wife, and they can help you, but you need a man, to be in your life and to pour into you, to help you, to hold you accountable. So
I know there's a lot of people that maybe have not dealt with this themselves, but maybe their kids are addicted to something. What would you say to parents who are trying to figure out what to do, where to turn, how to handle the situation? Because I think there's often a lot of fear around making the wrong decision and pushing kids away. And so what would you say to them as a parent of a kid who's really struggling with addiction?
It's always a challenge, right? Parents, the one excuse I hear when I talk to them about things like this is, well, if they're not getting high in my house, then they're just going to go on the street and use. Well, we're not helping anything there. I would say that I think it's going to be a collaborative approach. Your child, yes, they love you, but they're not going to listen to you. We're just not. I mean, my mom used to try to tell me to stop and this and that, and I loved my mom. But I don't know, as children, I don't know what it is, but we just kind of block out family, and we care more about what your friend, that you get high with says than what your mom says, who actually really cares about you. I would say they'd have to collaborate with the rest of the family, and with friends, people who are in their child's life, and everybody's got to get on the same page, because we're smart, addicts. When we want something, we're going to figure out a way to get it. And, just like a kid, when mom says no, they go to grandma, right? Well, it's the same thing. If I can't get what I want through my mom or my dad, I'm going to go to grandparents, or I'm going to go to this friend, or I'm going to go do it on my own. So I think, there's a way to love your child, but yet give them kind of like, here's how I'm going to love you. Me and the family know that you have an issue, and we want to help you with your issue. We can't support you in your issue, but we can support you by putting you and giving you to some people who can help you out of this issue, because I love you that much. Yep. And then you hope that they'll buy into that. Now, not everybody does. For me, I had to be broke, in jail, no other option. Right. Now, my mom used to tell me, I used to pray that she's like, I used to pray that you would get locked up. She's like, because I know you'd be safe, and you weren't using drugs. And I knew that some ultimatum would come that would force you to get some help. I said, well, thanks, Mom. Thanks for praying me to go to prison. But hey, it worked. That's how God, used her prayers to help me. And those are the things that parents really have to do. you can love them, but you can't enable them to keep going in that thing. And you can't make excuses for them. See, a lot of parents make excuses for their children. Well, they're battling with this, or well, they're going through with that. So, I'm trying to be sensitive to this. This is life or death.
Yeah.
This is life or death. People are dying at an exponential rate right now because of drugs and alcohol. I mean, it's the worst I've ever seen it in my life. And I've been in this field, actively participating in this field for 20 years, and now I'm actively helping people get out of this for the past 4 or 5. So it is life or death. Like you've got to and you got to nip it as soon as you notice. You got to ask the right questions, and once you start seeing it happen, you can't brush it under the rug. You can't make excuses. You got to go nip it in the bud right away. And if they don't want to cooperate, unfortunately, you have to kind of give that tough love, which is hard. Which my mom did. She wouldn't let me live at home. She wouldn't let me come home, and it ultimately forced me to jail and got me to where I am today. So,
you mentioned the issue today and just how bad it is. Can you speak a little bit to where the current situation is, even within our country, of drug use and the situation that we find ourselves in? Because I think a lot of people, if they're not careful, they don't really engage with that. Maybe they grew up with a family that drugs and were not an issue, and they're just unaware. Can you share a little bit about where things are at and how bad it really is?
Well, I think the overdose death rate for 2022 was 120,000. Now that's just overdose deaths. That's not people using drugs or getting hospitalized for drugs. I mean, that's basically deaths from opiates, basically. Right. The problem with the things today is when I did drugs weren't as strong as they were today. Heroin was, you heard about some overdose deaths, but not like you do today because this fentanyl, is out. And now they have all these synthetic versions of it. I mean, these people are making all these things and marketing it. And it can be in anything. We get reports of people dying because they were smoking marijuana. And we're like, well, how did somebody smoke marijuana and die? Well, because the marijuana they're lacing with fentanyl. So these people are smoking, thinking, I'm just smoking some weed. Yeah. And our country right now, I mean, I'm from Jersey. I think it's legal now. I think you can go buy it in a store, and so now it's becoming kind of like a normal thing, like alcohol. It's normal. You go to the street and you can, or at the store on the corner here in Pennsylvania, I can buy it at Sheetz and Wawa's and whatever. You can get it anywhere you want. So the access to these drugs is becoming easier and easier. The drugs are getting worse and worse. And you have to deal with these doctors and these prescriptions. I mean, I'm not opposed to people needing prescription medications for certain things. I understand. Some people actually do have like ADD, and they need a certain medication to keep them balanced. I get that. I'm not opposed to that. I believe God works in all different forms, and he uses his sovereignty to work with people, to help doctors come up with things to help people get better, right? Yeah. Now, it can't be the primary. Christ has to be primary, and these tools have to be secondary, right?
That's right.
But nowadays, doctors, the first thing, if you get a whiff of ADD, it's we're going to put you on Adderall, we're going to put you on Ritalin, and we're going to put you on these medications because they're going to help you. And then they put them on these medications, and half the time these kids are people don't even need them. And now they're getting these kids hooked on these pills. Now they can't get the pills, so now they're going to street drugs like methamphetamines or something like that because they're addicted to these pills. So it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And, I hope the Lord comes back soon. But if he doesn't come back soon, I don't know where this thing's going to end. I'm going to be quite honest. I'm thankful that Teen Challenge, an organization like ourselves, what's neat about us is, I don't know if you know a lot about Teen Challenges, but generally they don't deal with people who are on medications. They don't deal with detoxing people off of opiates. It's more like you get yourself detox, you get your medication straight, and then when all that's ready, you can come in the Teen Challenge and we'll try to help you. Well, that's a challenge these days and age. Yes. So the Teen Challenge, we believe that we want to, if you need detox, we want to provide it for you. We want to do it right here on the property. We want to get you into our program as soon as possible. If you're on certain medications, I have a doctor here who can help you with your medications and stabilize you on them, keep you on the ones you need, take you off the ones that you don't need. If you can only stay for 30 days, well, we have an option for that. If you can only stay for 90, we have an option for that. We want you to stay for a whole year because we know the longer you're in recovery, the more we can plant seeds and pour Christ into your life and give you counseling and groups, the better chance you have for success. And then we also have outpatient centers. So we know that, there's a guy who's been in recovery for 10 years. He goes to church. Well, he happened to relapse. Well, he's got a family to support and he can't go away for 30 days and lose his job. So we have outpatient centers now so they can go a couple times a week and we can try to help them that way. So that's what I love about our Teen Challenge is we have lots of different options for people based on the situation they have and what the need is that they have. But if more organizations don't get into this fight, it's going to get it's getting really out of hand really fast.
Shawn, I love what you guys are doing there in Pennsylvania. I think it's so important that the church and the extension of the church by parachurch ministries like the Redeemed and Teen Challenge that is connected to local churches, that we're doing everything we can to try to help and rescue people from the situations that are in and really putting it all on the table, but making sure that we're keeping Christ first and foremost, and just really appreciate the heart of Teen Challenge and what you guys are doing there. So I think, for me, if you're somebody that's thinking, oh, I do have a problem, or maybe I don't, I really can stop whenever I want to, where would you tell somebody to turn when they realize that they're at that place of complete brokenness, or they realize they actually have a problem?
Well, we hope that happens sooner than later. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to happen that way. It's usually when they're at their lowest of the low, and it's kind of hard because when I was out there, I didn't know who to call or where to go. That there was this option or that option. If somebody needed help, first of all, I would tell them to call us because I want them to come to us because I want them to meet Christ and I want them to get off drugs. But there's a lot of resources that they can use. They can, one thing about Teen Challenge, what we try to do is try to educate the churches because, the church is such a big vessel in the community, right? And anytime there's issues, whether you're saved or not, it just feels like people go to the local church because they're the church. They'll help you. So we do our best to educate the church. We give them information and literature so that if somebody comes in and they're on, hey, listen, I need some help, they have access to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to call this number right now. We're going to put you on the phone with somebody from the call center, Teen Challenge. They're going to do a questionnaire on you, get you set up, get you picked up, and get you into treatment as soon as possible. Once they get to that, I would say and you can also go to like your local social services building. Nothing against any secular program. Let's just be honest. You need Christ for salvation, and you need Christ for the total redemption of who you are. But people do have some success at some of these other programs too. I'm not going to say that someone hasn't gone to a secular program, God help. So you can go to your social services building and go there. But I would say if you're going to do that, still marry it with a local church so that you have spiritual support. Or you can go to your local church. Most churches nowadays, especially around us, we make sure that they have information and the literature and the resources to be able to connect people to the services that they need.
Yeah. No, that's great. There's always places that we can turn to. Thank you for helping kind of bring some of those out. And I think, like you mentioned, even those that are social services in the community of just being willing to try whatever it takes to make sure you're getting the help that you need in your own life. So you've made this drastic turn. There's been restoration. What do you do today to continue to maintain that after having some major relapses in your life? What do you do to protect yourself? And then how have you invested in your own kids to help, teach them and educate them about the dangers of drugs and alcohol?
So for me, obviously the most important thing is the spiritual man. So I really try to pour into that. I do my devotions. I do my Bible study. I pray. Obviously, go to local church. I try to surround myself with people of like mind. So for my spiritual man, I try to stay physically fit too. I think that's
Oh, I
important. I mean,
noticed
even
that. Those
Paul,
arms.
yeah, even Paul said that there is a little bit of, goodness that comes out of staying physically fit. I think that's in Philippians somewhere or something, right? So I try to stay physically fit. And then, I'm the type of person that if you're not growing, you're going, right?
Right.
So I like to try to keep, I like to be motivated. I like to read a lot of leadership stuff, John Maxwell, Simon Sinek, that kind of stuff that inspires me to want to be a better leader, because I'm senior vice president, so I have a good amount of people report to me. Plus, I guess I would say I'm the president of my house, right? So I have my wife that I have to nurture and care for, and my children. So spiritually most important. Then probably the next thing would be leadership books and books to help me grow, to become a better leader, to become a better person, and then obviously some physical fitness as well. Now my kids, I mean, we talk about this a lot. I mean, my kids, sometimes they joke about it. We'll be in the car driving, and there'll be a cop car coming down the street, and they'll be like, "Dad, duck, Dad, don't let them see it." Because that was my life back in the day, and we just get a kick out of it now.
That's good. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. All their friends know it too. So, I don't care. Because what happens is it opens up opportunity for me to speak to them. So ask me, well, why did they say that? Well, here's what happened. So, my kids, we talk openly about drugs and addiction. They have a spiritual life too. Like this morning, we get up at 6:30, we run. We did our plyometric training. We did our basketball skills training. Then when we got back, I made them a shake, and then they had to read Proverbs 1, and then they had to read the first chapter of The Essential Qualities of a Team Player by John Maxwell. And they're only 7th and 8th grade, my two boys. My daughter's on vacation right now living the life, but my two little boys, that's what they have to do. And that's kind of like how, I try to pour into them and make sure that they're, growing in the Lord, growing in the ability to be a leader and to be a man, or to be a woman for my daughter. And then I keep them active, and we talk about drugs, and we openly talk about addiction and things like that. As a matter of fact, we're going down to Kensington. We just were there a few months ago doing an outreach. We're going to go back again, and I'm going to bring my kids this time so they can get a little bit more hands-on experience of what is, because Kensington's bad right now. It's horrible. Mm-hmm. Get them down there, get them to see what's going on, let them. They'll probably remember some of the stuff that I had them in when they were younger by seeing some of those things. But I just want to keep it in the forefront of their mind. This is what happens when you make poor decisions and you get into drugs. Yeah. And they can serve. I want them to serve.
Well, I think one of the things that's so important about what you just shared is that it's not just about what you're getting away from, but it's about what you're pursuing. And I think sometimes when you're in an addiction situation, whether it's a drug, alcohol, or pornography or gambling, it's focused on what I'm trying to get away from. And if we're not careful, you become even more consumed by just thinking about what you don't want to do. You've got to find something better. You've got to fill yourself with the things that are beneficial. And so I love how you're doing that yourself, and also teaching your kids that of like, well, let's work on our spirit man. Let's feed the spirit man, so that the spirit man is the one that's in charge, not my body, but the spirit man's leading. So great job. Love what you're doing with your kids. Last question I'd love to ask you, I ask everybody that comes on the show, is what does redemption mean to you? We all know there's a theological answer to that, but it's always so revealing to hear people share what it means to them personally.
Well, that's a good question. I would say redemption for me is bringing, and this is our motto at Teen Challenge, bringing wholeness to the hopeless. I was really a hopeless soul there for a while. Yeah. And now I feel, that I don't know if you're ever 100% whole, but I feel very whole. I feel spiritually, I feel whole. And like anybody who's a servant of Christ, who walks with the Lord, we have our ups and downs and our spiritual valleys and our spiritual peaks. I go through all that, so don't think that, I'm this perfectly spiritual guy. But, I feel whole, at least that, because even when I'm spiritually down, the Lord is obviously trying to do something. So I know He's in my life. He's still there. So I feel like I'm spiritually whole. Family wise, that's the greatest gift that God can give you outside of salvation through Christ. The family is a wife and children. What a great gift that is. Now, you might ask me later tonight if I still feel the same way, but for now, it's the greatest gift I could have, and to be whole with that and to be whole with my wife. And again, we're married. Our marriage isn't perfect, but it's redeemed. It's restored. It's Christ-centered. My relationship with my kids, it's redeemed, it's restored, it's Christ-centered. My relationship with the Lord, it's redeemed, it's obviously Christ-centered. And then, just being part of a local church and building friendships and networking, giving back to the community. It's just like this whole approach that God, I think He doesn't just redeem you, partially. It's not like, well, this part of my life is redeemed, but this part is still,
That's right.
And even if it's not perfect, He's still actively redeeming you always, whatever it is, as long as we're keeping Him first, we're seeking Him. He's our answer to all things. He's actively redeeming you and bringing wholeness to your life. So I guess that's what it would mean to me.
Shawn, what a great answer. Love that. Love the wholeness that's being brought. And man, I love the joy that you exude. I think that's so much of that is that when you are in those low places or high places that you have the joy of the Lord. And I can just see that and interacting with you today. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your story of hope and redemption. We believe that God can restore all things, and that sometimes it's when we're in the worst of the situation, when it seems most hopeless, that God can show up in the middle of that. So God bless you, man.
Hey, man, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me ramble on a little bit. You didn't cut me off or anything. I really appreciate it.
Oh, so good to hear your story, man.
All right, praise God, man.
Blessing.
Thanks, Nathan. Take care, man.
We've heard a lot of hopeful, inspirational stories from the guests on this podcast, but we want to make sure we want to hear your story too. If you've got a story of redemption or God doing amazing things in your life, go to theredeem.com, and in the right-hand corner, you'll see Contact, and click on Share Your Story. You can tell us about your experiences there, and you'll have the option of sharing it with the rest of the Redeemed community. Your story could be the inspiration someone else needs to find hope and overcome their own life struggles. We look forward to hearing from you.